I'm Vartika Rawat, journalist at ET CFO, and the whole team of ET CFO on International Women's Day bring to you this webinar on being a woman CFO. What does it mean? So even as corporate India sees a surge in number of women making it to the top ranks, women CFOs continue to remain a rare breed. Balancing between professional and personal life, making life choices, a lack of role model sometimes or a mentor have sometimes contributed to a fewer numbers of women taking up C-suite roles. At ETCFO, when we talk about what attributes to a successful leader, we say that knowledge humbled them, experience modified them, mistakes became their learnings, but being a woman made them stronger. So here we are to discuss what it means to be a woman CFO. And we have with us women who made it to the C-suite. So please join me in welcoming Purnima Subramanian, CFO, Reliance Nippon Life Insurance. Rashmi Joshi, hello. Rashmi Joshi, Head, General Accounting and Assurance, Global Business Services, BP India. She was also the former CFO at Castrol India.
Hi everyone.
Meeta Agarwal, who's the CFO of Licious.
Hi everybody.
Liril Gupta, she's a member Azim Premji Foundation and was also former CFO G Medical Systems.
Good afternoon everyone, pleasure to be here.
And then we have Lika Jain, who's the Head of Finance and Corporate Function, Square Panda India. So welcome ladies to our webinar today.
Hi, good afternoon everyone.
Good afternoon. So, let me start with my opening question to all of you. And this is the most crucial one. Why are there so few women leaders at the top? So, let me start with Purnima.
Just like you said, it's a rare breed. I was just thinking about that and reading about it. And one of the things that I found was women who make it to the workforce. It's about 50% of them are women. But by the time they actually come to the CFO's position, there are only 15% of them. And I think there are sort of a host of factors which really are the reason for it. There is an unconscious bias that sort of exists, about women and what they can do and what they can manage, etc. And I don't think it is ill-intended, etc. But I think there is an unconscious bias that sort of exists. And that is one of the big reasons, I would assume. But also it is about how much self-advocacy a woman does. For a woman to say that, these are my qualifications and I am the one who's supposed to be, the best for this job, I think it takes a lot. It's a lot easier for a man to do that. And I think these are some of the reasons. So given the statistics that I just mentioned, yeah, I think it's good to be here and to be a CFO.
Right. So, you mentioned there's an unconscious bias, which is obviously not ill-intended, but we need to look at those. And you also said that, self-advocacy is something that a woman should, introspect. On that note, I'll move to Rashmi and I'll ask her the same question. Why do you think there are few women at the top?
I think we did talk of unconscious bias. I just wanted to add, there are both conscious and unconscious biases. So society is made certain way for centuries, and it's just so difficult to get rid of all those things suddenly. So, and it's going to be there. So I think the strength has to be in the women to address those around her, be clear about what she wants, and ask for it. And lean in, and probably it takes much more effort for a woman considering the responsibility the society casts on her. But so a lot is left to her. So while all the factors in the society push a man towards a successful career, there are quite a few factors in the society that keep pulling a woman back from a successful career. So you need probably 4 times more strength to get there, is how I look at it. But it's all inside that woman, and her strength is tested from time to time.
Right. Very, very rightly put, ma'am. Meeta, what are your views here?
Yeah, so I think I quite agree with what Rashmi and Purnima have already said, right? I think the challenges are multifold, starting with bias, stereotypes, which we need to overcome. I think the other challenge that we really face, especially in finance and some of the technical fields, is being the only female person in the room as you grow up or traverse the path, and the pressure to prove your competence is just so intense, right? And the entire onus, like Rashmi also said, rests on the woman. So that, I think, is another piece that is a huge challenge that we face as women progress through the runs.
Pressure to prove their competence is a big challenge, and it's very intense. Right, rightly put. Lika, what about you?
My view is not much different from what these people are saying, but there is one more thing that we need to look into. So it's like a funnel. So as we say, at entry level, the funnel is very big, right? And currently, so we also have to see it decade wise. 10 years back, it was different. Currently, it is very different. And 20 years back, it was very, very different. Now, as we are moving, the funnel is increasing like at 2x, 3x level. And it is increasing not in a decade, but rather in every 2 years, it is increasing. And, the domains like finance and tech, as she was saying, rightfully mentioning, but these both domains are also seeing the entry level happening at big time. But what happens from there? From entry level to C-suite is a real challenge, basically. And why that challenge is there? Definitely biases are there, challenges are there. Then the biggest thing is that there is a need of an allyship there in all the communities across. And that need to come not only at corporate level, but it has to also come at organization level. Organizations have to drive it. Now, if we see one of the sector which has done phenomenally well is banking sector. Now, did they design it? No, they did not design it. They were not seeking it as a sector, but it just happened by default. And the sector has seen women across all the levels and have given so many leaders. If we look around, and not only leaders today, it has actually given us entrepreneurs and even given us people who have become has started startups basically. So my key thing is that yes, there are challenges, there are biases, but I will put it more to the funnel. If we increase the funnel, if we double the funnel, and we do some efforts at that level, C-suite level will automatically get impacted by it.
Right. Thank you, Lika. Lyril, I'll come to you here and I'll ask you, what is your point of view?
Yeah. So thanks, Vartika. I think it's a very complex sort of set of parameters. So in my mind, I think to say that the answer to this question is, X, Y, Z. Is something which I think will not be doing justice, right? So that's my own, it's a very personal view. But I think also my experiences have suggested, right, that part of it is also the choices the women make, right? So yes, we have talked about conscious, subconscious bias, right? I think if there is an opportunity after one has taken a break, to make that choice is a very hard push the women make. And I think that is what sometimes is missed. So as perhaps, if you have, particularly I'm saying because of our social cultural context, right? Whether you talk about middle class or, upper middle class, or even, societies where education is a sort of, it's not a privilege for the girls, but the education is sort of a part of the routine, right? But to come back after being a mother and to actually restart is a lot of push needed, right? And that is where I think we fail. That's my very personal view, and we have to do something about it. It's also a very strong view, I hope, that how get more systematic, how organizations can be more systematic about to give that.
I think a very critical point has been touched by you, and let's hope to get back about the same during our conversation. So, moving forward, I would come back to Rashmi, and Rashmi, I would like to explore this with you. That as Lika said, that men and women start together. They're at parity, but however, there are lesser women who are reaching at the top. So what should women need to change, learn, or unlearn what are those traits that are needed in a woman to enable her to reach to, say, being a CFO, reach to that CFO position?
Sure. So, see, but I'll deal with it in two parts. Okay. So the first is certain qualities that women have, which are innate to them. Yeah. And the second is what she needs to do technically, and from knowledge perspective, right? So the first part is, see, CFO is a key leadership role in any organization, and it plays a vital part in defining the organization's culture. And the traits I mentioned are needed for women and men equally, but women have innate qualities that are becoming more and more relevant in the business today, and in a world that is impacted by pandemic and climate change. So the need of the current times is to have leaders who are sensitive, genuinely caring about people and environment, who nurture people for a better future, not necessarily more profits. Who are inclusive listeners, who integrate diverse perspectives while making decisions. And an example is when COVID happened, the nations where women were leaders or the topmost leaders have done much better in managing the pandemic. So take example of New Zealand, Germany, even Taiwan for that matter. So women do have an advantage. We also now need leaders who are agile, who can multitask and are comfortable with ambiguity, and very much applicable to a CFO's role. Because there was a time when we didn't know for next 6 months, are we going to have the revenues or not? But the costs are going to be there, and how do we manage in that situation, right? We need women and men who are resilient in the face of challenges. But the good thing is, women have these qualities naturally. So we are now at a distinct advantage. And I think that should encourage a lot of women who want to be CFOs or, go for C-suite roles. And having said that, a finance leader woman will need the following traits, which are, she has to be a courageous, conscious keeper, being aware of the risks and bringing forth those risks to the management team to address and suggesting mitigations to drive smooth business growth. She should be financially savvy, can quickly understand and present numbers with insights, and build a compelling narrative which is relevant to the stakeholders and audience. She has to be a dependable business partner, having high commercial acumen, aware of external and internal environment, its impacts, and proactive in planning a response and collaborating to deliver and implement a response. So she has to be an enabler, not an naysayer. And of course, strategic thinking, with the curiosity to know more about the business, the technologies that are impacting the business and finance, and how she can harness the power of the new tech to improve and grow that business. And always in learning mode, in an ever-changing world. I think those are some of the things that come to my mind.
All right. So, I think what stood out as one of the points that you mentioned is that, they should have the courage to be the conscious keeper. And I think it's a very important point that you've mentioned. On that note, Purnama, what about you? What are your views, here? What should women need to change or learn or unlearn today, to be at that CFO position?
Right. I think Rashmi sort of touched upon most of the qualities that a CFO should have. And really, there are, I would like to answer the question in two parts. One is the traits that a CFO should have. And I think that is really agnostic to whether it is a man or a woman. And then the qualities which I think are really useful for a woman to have so that it gives her that edge which is sort of required. So in the first section, really, I think she should have the ability to trust, be approachable so that people are able to, or the teams, beneath you, are able to, give you accurate information, are not afraid to approach you or tell you when they think that there is a mistake. I think the connectivity that is required with the various other CXOs and below within an organization, I think maintaining that connectivity is very important. Similarly, building peer networks with other CFOs, etc., is very important. I would think from the industry which I come, which is the insurance industry, there are very few companies. There are only 24 life insurance companies. So for a precedence, or for, to figure out what is the next thing to do, or what, or get a consensus view, etc., peer network, I think, is the one thing that is, really helpful. Apart from that, like Rashmi mentioned, the strategic thinking and prioritization, of course, is sort of very important. Really, the ability to look forward, and not just look forward, but do so with being able to understand what are the interlinkages between the various parts of the organization, and then work to your advantage, around them. The last one really is, the one big thing I learned is, earlier I thought it was important to be able to crunch the numbers and know your numbers. But really, what is more important than that is to be able to say the story behind. How do you, the narrative, like what Rashmi mentioned, so the story behind, or to let people understand why you're pushing for the numbers, or why you should, see it a certain way. I think the story, the ability to say a story, I think, is what really will help, whether it's a man or a woman who's the CFO. Just one last thing is, never say no to an opportunity. I think that is what is really, helpful. Never be afraid to face an uncertainty. The other section where I wanted to talk about the ones which are unique to women, and to my mind, I feel they're more relevant to a woman than a man, and that is to be able to sort of keep your energy flows. And really, what I mean by that is, you're basing your priorities on the activities that really energize you, both whether it's at work or at home. What are those activities that are giving you this energy? Because then you don't feel exhausted by doing a task, or, or you're not getting burnt out, because you really are doing things that you like. And then you're actively sort of managing your resources in a way that you do not have to dip into your reserves or have a burnout. And I remember this out of something that Zia Modi had said, that even when she had 3 children, 3 young daughters, she managed to work 16 hours a day. And the fact that she was winning in every court was giving her the high. And that sort of, gave her that extra energy to sort of pull through. So I think that is really important. And the last one really is not just positive thinking, but having a positive frame of mind, where you're able to accept an adversity that is coming your way. You accept it and find countermeasures for it, so that you're able to face any adversity that's coming your way. I think those are the traits I would say is important for a CFO, for a woman.
Right. So very, very rightly put, Purnima. And I'll just pick up one point that you mentioned about, having a peer network. I was reading a few studies on women leadership, and this one thing came out very prominently was that, while there are barriers for women leadership, one main barrier is that a lack of role model or mentor. But on the other hand, I was reading an author, Apurva Purohit. She wrote the book "Lady, You the Boss." So she
Yes.
says that you don't need a role model, but but in today's life there are various role models that you have now. But you can be a role model for others, and in doing so, you will also be pushing yourself to achieve and do better each day.
Sure.
So, on that note, I'll just move to the next question, and it is also a very pertinent question that we would want to discuss with the panel, which is that, what are the challenges faced by women finance managers, before and after helming the CFO position, that a corporation should understand, to build a level playing field for both men and women, when we talk about equality versus equity. So what are those conscious biases that corporations need to understand and work towards? So Meeta, can we have an answer from you on this question?
Yeah, thanks, Vartika. I think in part we touched upon a few of them as we went along the discussion, right? So if I pick this up in two buckets, right? One is before you've kind of reached to a senior managerial or a leadership or a CXO suit, the biggest biases that women face or the biggest challenges is one, just countering the stereotypes, right? Or long working hours, may not be able to do, or this is a very, number intensive work, women are generally not, good with numbers, so to say. And to be able to counter those stereotypes and be actively able to break them is one such bias. Technicals, I think, comes across both men and women, right? So I'm taking that as a given that if you need to, and if you're, going up that path, then your technicals need to be sound, and Rashmi touched upon it in detail, so I won't, delve further. The other challenge that women face, which I also mentioned, right, is this constant skepticism and doubt which is cast on the capabilities and the financial acumen and the pressure to prove your mettle. Right there, I think what comes in handy or what becomes a key enabler is a lot of self-belief and a constant self-advocacy if you are, being overlooked, so to say. And finally, when you're still making up to that path of CXO is what we are calling it a broken rung effect. So women, because of these biases and stereotypes, tend to get stuck at entry level or middle management positions. Now, there are social barriers or milestones like, marriage, maternity that count towards this, or just simply being overlooked because of conscious and unconscious biases for higher level managerial jobs. And that becomes a vicious cycle, right? So those are basically the three key ones that counter towards female managers who are aspiring to be CXOs. Once you have reached that level, I think the single critical one that becomes a challenge is something that Rashmi also mentioned. I think networking for the sake of networking is a key skill that I think women don't have a natural affinity towards, right? And that is something that we need to really inculcate and develop in ourselves as women leaders, because you have a very large cohort of counterparts who do it well. So that's one key challenge that we need to overcome. And those, I think, are the key ones that really women leaders face.
Right. So I expect all of you to stay in touch with us and, grow our network of women CFOs so that, we can move it forward. Lika, I would move to you also and ask the same question. According to you, what are those challenges that you feel that finance manager is facing?
Vartika, it's a very good question and very critical question. And whatever Meeta said, Poonima said, Rashmi said, all of it is equally critical and important. But let's just hear one data point. I was just reading this report a few days back. They say for every 100 men promoted to manager level, only 86 women are promoted. Right now, with this point only, we can understand that the before and after is so critical. Now, when we talk about before challenges are these kind of challenges only, that you enter, that you climb to senior managerial level, and during that tenure, how long you hold yourselves. So the motto has been, at least my motto had been always like this: don't stop, because I was seeing seniors stopping in between, dropping out in between, and I was seeing even my peers also opting out. So these and the other challenges that I was constantly facing at my level, and I could see others also facing, which many of them have covered in a very sophisticated manner, but I would actually like to address it pretty head on. You are always being questioned for the credibility you bring on the table. You are always being questioned for the hard work you are doing it. And long hours in finance is like, men have just cultivated it, like till the time you don't slog 12 hours, till the time you don't work till 11 o'clock in the night, it's like you're not there, you're not ambitious. My ambition cannot be linked to number of hours. No, at that level, when a woman, a young mother, or a newly married girl, or even if they are not married, and even if they are not mother, even if they choose to be single, these are so daunting thoughts they have, that I have seen women not getting promoted because they are of a marriageable age, or they will relocate, or she's a South Indian working in a North Indian setup, or a girl from Delhi working in a Mumbai space. These are the biases we never talk about only. And interestingly, these are the things that even women to women are not raised. Now I throw another very personal information. I have two younger sisters. One of them is in finance, another is in HR. And I keep telling the one who's in HR, listen, you guys really need to do a lot of work around this. Only people in finance cannot do it. And I have friends who are in marketing and they question me, why in finance there are so less women at top? I said, you will not understand it. It's not that easy, right? There is a grind that happens in finance, and the people who don't, or who miss that grind, people means the women who miss that grind, most of the time miss reaching at the top. Now what happens once you reach at top? Basically, one important thing which I faced when I reached at that level, you are alone there. And you are not alone there just because there are not enough women there. You are alone there because the role that you are carrying. The role is of a CFO. The role is of a finance person. So many confidential information there are there. And by nature, as women are, you have to be a little. If you're not too pally, so then there are certain subjects to that. Basically, people will start forming perceptions. So even at the top, even if you have climbed that ladder, even if you have reached to that position, then there are other challenges that start creeping. But biggest opportunity I see at that level is that you can bring more and more women into the workspace, because now you are at a level where you can support the entire ecosystem, and you can start building this. So at my organization level, it will not be it should not be surprising, but 50% are women, and across all the levels. Rather, the entire senior leadership, 80% senior leadership was of women. So it's a constant challenge at both the places, before becoming a CFO or heading the finance function, but constant. And what I always say, you need basically you need a community to support you internally in the organization and outside also.
Right, very rightly put in. Thank you for your honest response, Lika. 2-3 things came out from all of your responses is that, young female managers have to, counter the stereotypes, and they have to deal with the skepticism around their credibility. So, on that note, I'll come to Lyril, and I would like to understand that, what can aspiring women professionals do to advance towards this role? By that I mean, like, I'll just put it in context. So does it also require women to perform extraordinarily to prove their mettle? And how can young CFO, and this is an important question, how can young women managers aspiring to become leaders of tomorrow manage such skepticism and such such challenges?
Vartika, I think it's a good segue from what I think other panelists have also spoken. I think there are two sort of pillars, I would say, the women will need to navigate when you're aspiring to actually be at the helm of a finance function, right? I think one pillar is the technical skills, and the other is the soft. Now, if you want to just think of it, while these are very cliche buckets, right? I think what I wanted to say is, when you double click, it's a host of, let's say, whether you call it skills or expertise or ability or competencies. I'm not going into, which words, but I think what is that in both these aspects, you need to learn managing conflict. Right, and I don't think that is something which is actually picked up in a classroom training. I think most of the organizations talk about it. We will have for women, to groom the women leaders. We will have workshops on, conflict management or, sort of negotiation or influencing skills. Right. My own personal, sort of belief as well as an experience is that. These abilities are cultivated when you are actually on the job. So it's important that one, women themselves realize and recognize that they need to cultivate it on the job, and the organization will need to at least provide the sort of environment or the ecosystem to say, therefore, what do you do, right? So if you are actually in the making, right, you are actually prior to getting into the senior management position, right? That it's important that you are able to prepare well. Now, this is the place where most of us, and I'm saying this is particularly in the case of women, the sort of your own self-imposed need to prove tends to make you over-prepare, right? So you actually over-prepare and sometimes just miss an important aspect of an argument, which the other, sort of stakeholders will bring. And it's, sometimes you feel also that, please just pull the rug under my feet. What do I do? So the link, therefore, a soft skill to that is, how do you make sure you practice your public speaking, right? Your own confidence, your self-assurance has to be, and the self-assurance should not be to say that, what I've prepared as an analyzed is the right thing, but to also literally think on your, actually just sort of do a little bit of back of the envelope preparation and say, okay, I hear what the counter view is. So let me say, if I was to take this counter view, these are the pros and cons. But we don't do that, right? We are not trained to do that actually. And no classroom sessions will do it. It's only on the topic. So in my mind, if I was to just sort of summarize for any young women who's aspiring to be CFO, is, I think one is believe in yourself to an extent that you're self-assured. I think that's very important and key. However, do not let it, what should I say? It should not get mixed up with the over-preparation part of it, right? And that is going to be key for you to actually make the difference and go from your senior management to the C-suite.
Right. Thank you, Little. And Rashmi, I would come to you and ask you the same.
Yeah, thank you. See, from my perspective, we women first need to work on their mindset. Okay, and if they want to be CFOs, then they have to really focus on that and literally cut out the noise that they hear in terms of discrimination or whatever we talk of as challenges, right? Because if you keep thinking about it, it'll be very difficult to get out of it. So you have to just focus on what you want and then ruthlessly prioritize other things, okay, in your life. Because make choices that are smart, that will help you become the CFO if you want to become a CFO. And then you don't get emotional about some of the choices, not feeling guilty about being ambitious. That is very important. Once you're there mentally, I think many organizations have good processes for people to move into various roles. So typically even if they don't have, we can try to, you have to have a plan for yourself. To plan your career, you can have a short-term, mid-term, long-term plan. Talk about that plan with first your line manager, then other stakeholders who are interested in your role, in the current role. Talk to various people, your mentors, coaches, who are available to you, or anyone who's outside who's willing to help you. But keep doing that from time to time. And then, you should keep mapping the competencies you have versus the roles you're aspiring for. And what is the gap? How do you fill the gap? Have that conversation in your organization as to, which roles will help me bridge this gap. While you can do a lot of classroom training, what will ultimately take you to the CFO role is what you've done on the job. So try to get into roles that will take you eventually to the CFO role. These roles could be in different functions in the organizations. They could be in the same function with different facets of finance function, or in different parts of the world if it's a multinational. So go ahead and ask for those opportunities. That is very important. And once you start doing that, you will get a lot of options as to how do you get there. And keep all options open. Don't have a fixated thing, okay, I'll go this way. Because today there's a lot of uncertainty. So as things change, organizations restructure, keep finding opportunities. And you will eventually get there because you will have mentors or sponsors who will volunteer you for projects. Be prepared to work hard. When you do all this, you're putting yourself out there. You want to be successful. So you will have to work hard and work smart. And that's what I think will help. Yeah.
Right. Thank you. So, I would quickly like to talk to our participants. And, if you have any questions for our panel, please go ahead and send it to the chat box and we'll pick it up from there. And also, to all the young people who are watching this webinar, I think these words of wisdom are coming from people who have gone through the drill, who have reached that leadership level after facing those challenges. So, yeah, so let's move on that note. And, I would like to come to Purnima. And Purnima, I would like to ask you that, what can organizations do to facilitate and implement gender equity policies to hire, retain, and promote women to C-suite roles? And as per you, what are those proactive steps that should be taken to ensure that women get equal representation in the boardroom as well?
Right. Two big questions, really. So I think how do we facilitate this gender diversity? I think one of the big things that I even spoke about early on was this unconscious bias. And so how do you address this subtle or unconscious bias? The conscious bias is something that you know how it sort of impacts. People can see it. There is a certain level of discrimination. There is an impact to it. But the unconscious bias is something that's more subtle. And so it can cause a damage and you may not be able to have enough recourse. So I think having more structured processes and procedures, around the whole hiring process, the various assignments, the business decisions that you take, etc., where there is a structured process around it, it'll probably leave, or limit the opportunity for an unconscious bias to sort of creep in. And that may not be the only, way to address it, but definitely there has to be, the processes can be the first step to sort of do it. The other thing that I think will be very useful is that we should have clear targets. Organizations should establish a clear diversity target. And say this is what we will achieve by so and so, etc., and then find a way to track and measure the progress against whatever has been set as a target. And research also suggests that where companies are clear about this, a lot has been achieved from a diversity sort of perspective. The other thing that I think some of my colleagues here have spoken is about this whole mentorship, sponsorship, etc. So I think while it is important, from an organization perspective, if it is sort of established, a program for mentorship is established, or a program for sponsorship is sort of established, and there's enough training and development programs that sort of create a support network, which allows you to, lean on the others for the sort of a mentor, for getting a mentor, for having a sponsorship program. I think then it can sort of facilitate the gender diversity a lot better. The other point really is on the work-life balance. And, as a part during this whole pandemic and that the work from home situation, I think we've realized that it is possible to work remotely, and that it's not important to always be at work. I mean, in the last 2 years, we've done so much that we've never done before. If some of those facilities are able to be, extended to women, I think women will come back from, their maternity or their childcare a lot earlier than what they are currently doing, because it is easier to find a support system, etc., if you're able to sort of, use this opportunity of working from home. And that would sort of encourage more women to not leave their job. Really, if they don't leave their job, I think they're strong enough, they're qualified enough to sort of make it make it to one of these levels. But really, many women, for lack of support system or for lack of various other facilities for childcare, I think sort of drop out from the active mainstream work. So I think those are some of the important things that we can do. The last one in this list is, I think there is a multiplier effect. If you have women at the top, then they will sort of ensure that there are women in their teams, etc. So again, the research I was reading suggests that if you have one person who you've taken at the C-suite level, then you will have at least 3-4 more people who are in the pipeline to sort of make it to that sort of a role. And it's really true for me. From my perspective, I ensure that every sub-team within my finance team at least has, a fair representation of women. So currently we're almost 45% women in the team. And there is still a long way to go, but at least, we're sort of trying to improve. And this was far worse when I joined sort of 4 years back, and it's come here. But 50% is still not what, we really want, and it can be more than that. So I think these are some of the things that we can probably do to facilitate gender diversity. Your other question was on how do you ensure equal representation in the boardroom. I think from a regulatory perspective, the Companies Act and its introduction of at least one woman director, I think has at least helped, to some extent. It is definitely not enough, but that's a great step forward at least. I think to my earlier point on self-advocacy, I think women don't do it as much as I see men do it. So maybe a sponsorship of, the highly qualified women candidates. So if a, remuneration and nomination committee is able to sort of actively say that for this position, I'm only going to look at women, or put more women candidates forward, or make it their purpose to sort of encourage more women to sort of apply, etc. And the fact that there's a sponsor behind them could sort of help them advocate a lot more for themselves. I think that's one thing. And then obviously, if there is an active mentorship program, I think that can position more female candidates to sort of seek more such sponsorship programs, etc. And ultimately we have a lot more women who are in the pipeline. Like what Lika said earlier, if they are more in the pipeline, if they're more in the funnel, then I think automatically, they will find their way. So if you're able to get more people into the pipeline because of your sponsorship and your mentorship sort of programs, then I think more people will be in the pipeline and they will sort of be available when the time comes. Also, I think it is for the organization to set the sort of tone. If, for example, the board chairman, he's able to sort of speak about it. If he thinks that, yes, in the organization, in the board, I would like to have more representation because that gives a more balanced view. I'm also told that where there are more women or women CEOs, apparently those companies are termed as less risky. So there are advantages of that. If that is sort of explained, if that is the tone with which he sort of speaks, then I think there is a greater chance for, it sort of sets the tone. And then there is more acceptance of that view. I think those are some of the things that I can think of.
All right. We are getting a lot of questions, and one of the question is sent by Nidhi Dave, and I think Liril has replied to her as well. But I would like to read it out to the audience and the panel because I have a follow-up question that I would want to ask Liril there. So she says that I am an entry-level woman in finance, and do you think the gap is less if you have graduated from a B school and work in big MNCs? Do you think that will ease the gender bias struggle? So, On that note, I know that Liril has answered that question, but I would also want to add that, ensuring the visibility of women, regardless of their in-office or at-home work environment, how can we ensure that at the root level, where men and women start at parity, it continues, the parity continues? Yes, Purnima, Rashmi, you have something to add.
Yeah, I think I just wanted to add some of the things that are done in BP. And BP is, I'm very proud to share that BP at its, it's the only oil company which has more women than men in its top management. And they just announced that on LinkedIn. So that's fantastic. And we have a BP Win network in our organization in India. I lead that. And we actually have we work on 3 themes to address the question you have, Vartika. One is sourcing, second is inclusion, and third is development. Yeah. So on the sourcing side, how do you encourage more and more women to join your organization? How do you make your organization attractive to women? So having policies that are inclusive. For example, treating everyone with equity. I didn't say equally, right? So for example, giving time off to a woman in maternity is equal to, doing something else for a man if he wants to study or whatever, right? So there are different things for different people. So being understanding about what a woman needs to progress and supporting her and treating her that way throughout her career is what is needed absolutely. And, there are organizations where there are policies. So for example, if a woman goes for a maternity leave, when she comes back, she is not considered for promotions immediately, or her increments are prorated, or her bonuses are prorated. I mean, these policies put women at the back foot, and they start thinking, why is this done to me? Is it my fault that I'm a woman? I mean, they're doing the most difficult job in the world is to bring human beings into this world, and creating a new generation and looking after them, and that shouldn't be punished. Okay, so having policies that encourage women to stay in the workforce, and for example, not working late till 11 and 12 in the night, or encouraging a culture where working late is shunned and not appreciated, is very important. Also, in terms of development, specific inputs for women's development, having development offer. We are rolling out a women's development offer in our India Global Business Solutions, and in this week, which will take care of, how do you, I talked about certain things, right? Making a career plan, having mentors, discussing your career plans, and supporting them along the way to take them to that next level and the top level. I think some of these things need to be done. It's a huge subject, but I don't want to take too much of time. But
so, Liril, do you want to add anything here?
So I think I just was, going towards when the equal opportunities sort of being there in the educational institution to get the professional degree. From there to corporate, what changes is, of course, the entire landscape is very, very broad, right? Each multinational or even an Indian organization has their own frames and their own sort of, I would say, value systems, right? Which actually inform their policies. So I think what is required is a lot of structural and systemic change. So, and it's not a structural and systemic change at an organization level. And I think it's perhaps at a, at the country level, we need to probably think of. One of the things which I have sort of been personally thinking about and sort of recommending to some organizations very recently, because it's something which came from my own experience, right? It is important to recognize that at the time when, the conflicting priorities for a woman of a family, sort of responsibility, and to see that I'm actually doing very great in my professional career. And if I continue to be sort of in the same, pace, I will compromise on my family responsibilities, but I will be able to make it to the C-suite, right? Is there a way in which, I know there are organizations which talk about we have creches and we have the support system for the childcare and all, but I think it is beyond that because, women and particularly women in finance, especially if you're a listed company, you have the analyst call, you have the investor meetings, you have multiple challenges which you are dealing with, right? So it's not a childcare which is a 9 to 6. And while I'm not a propagator of that, you have to put in 11 hours. There are days in finance responsibilities, you will need to extend your working hours. And one of the suggestions which I've been thinking it's important for organizations to consider is something which is like a family benefit for the women who are actually in C-suite or are trending towards the C-suite positions, right? So it, sort of, we have heard a lot about gender pay discrimination, right? So I want to just expand that to say, I don't think it is so much as a discrimination. I think we should propagate for saying, can that gender pay account for the sort of important factors like family benefit support? So can you give them incremental so that they are able to build a support system? If I need to have two, support system which is working 16 hours, 8 hours, because you also do not want to actually extend the support system you have at home if you do not have a extended family to take care of your child. You really can make that investment. Any organization can make that investment, right? And therefore, I'm calling it as a family benefit support. So it's a very small thing in my mind, and the reason I'm calling it small is that it's not a total amount. You will have to really take into account the context of that, sort of women leader you want to invest in, and you can therefore bring it into your compensation packages. And this is something which I personally feel can do wonders for women who are actually in that mid 30s to early 40s, and that's pretty much the time when the family responsibilities take the sort of forefront, and you are actually in a dilemma. What do I do? It can really be very, very helpful to the women executives.
Right. Thank you, Liril. I can see Meeta and Lika, they have not spoken for a while, and I would come to you guys and I would want to ask you, when we talk about balancing personal life and professional obligations, Lika also mentioned very important point of long hours and in people in finance logging themselves. So I just want to ask how about balancing personal life amid personal obligation? What does it feel like? How can CFOs manage it at that level? So Meeta, let's start with you.
Yeah, thanks, Vartika. It's a classic question, right? And I say that because I don't know how many of our male counterparts get asked that question. But on that note, right, I think the fundamental assumption laid out for women is that they have to make a choice, right, between having a successful career and a fulfilling personal life, which is not the same for the male counterparts, right? And I think if I take my personal example, the biggest challenge on my path to a C-suite came when I was blessed with my twin girls. A large part of that, I think, is, so there are two parts to it, right? One is this entire external peripheral noise that comes with it in terms of biases, etc. That, oh, now how are you going to work, right? How are you going to put in whatever is the required number of hours, grill, etc. The other is also a lot of internal challenges and, the journey that comes within from a woman, which is about not feeling guilty, right? Of not being always available. And I think their prioritization and being able to balance, family and work is a big enabler. That journey is something which I think female candidates from a managerial level to the CXO is something that they need to traverse. I mean, you can't do it all, and that's okay for both men and women. But we inherently have that, the first care principle is something that comes to fore, right? And I think there, even having equal partners, what I say is, the spouse you choose is possibly the biggest career driving decision that you make. So, making sure that our men are also equally trained and, give the same respect and equal parental responsibilities, or being just real partners is something that helps. And I think that's how I kind of take it as well, prioritizing to the hilt, because it boils down to what you want is what you will get. So that's really the mantra and the take on this for me.
Very, very well put, Meeta. And there was one of the in one of the question the audience have asked about the role of husband or a support system in a woman's journey as a CFO. So I think you've partly answered that as well in your answer. Lika, I would like to come to you and ask you what is your opinion here?
Firstly, Meeta has covered everything, whatever I would have said, right?
Okay.
Seriously, because I have been through all this, what she was just mentioning. There are guilt moments, and not moments, I should say, there are guilt days, moments, month, week, everything. And everyone learn through their mistakes. So there was a time I used to think that I can balance. And when I used to fail, I literally used to feel miserable about it, right? But then you learn through those mistakes. And here, what is most important is that you have to continuously go on. Never stop yourself. Always prioritize yourself first. Because till the time you are not happy with yourself, till the time you are not at a balance with yourself, everything else will not matter. So even if you deprioritize, let's say, your career a bit, and you're still working, you will not be happy. At the end of the day, you will keep on thinking something, why this is that. So most important aspect is this, that prioritize yourself. And secondly, I may sound little off the line, but basically you will not realize that every day will be different. For me personally, it is a complete situation based. There are days where I have to be a mother. There are days when I have to be a daughter. But then most of the days, I am what I am professionally. Let's put it like this. So work comes first. And then how you structure family expectations around it. One very important point, as Meeta said, as you were also saying, yes, your spouse matters a lot. That is one of the defining, thing in your life. And it became much and much clearer to me when I look at other successful CXOs across the globe, whomsoever if you see. If they are successful, if they have reached to that level, believe me or not, the spouses have played phenomenal role. We just cannot ignore that. We just cannot say that, that you can do it on your own. No, just be, just accept that fact that you need a support system, and that support system will start from your spouse. And once that support system is in place, everything else will fall in place. Basically, it's like that. But lastly, there is nothing called balance, Ritika. You just live for the day. It's like that.
All right. So
I'll add to what Lika said, right? Just give me 30 seconds.
Sure,
and I think, because there is a possible tendency of this being misinterpreted as well, right? When we both mention spouses, right? It's because on the the male side, right? It's always a given that the female counterpart will be a real and a support partner, but that's not always true the other way around, which is why we call out. It's not that it's enabler specifically in a woman's life. It applies equally to men and women, but the equality on the man side is always in the eye and taken as an accepted norm.
Meeta, you've very rightly quoted an author that choosing a husband is the second most critical career choice that you make. So yes, and this whole webinar we try to take a look, we try to decode, we try to demystify what being a woman means, and I hope we've done that. We've done justice to it. I'm sure there's a lot more, and this was just sneak a peek, but we would want to explore more. We would want to have those discussions at length and more often on our platform etcfo.com. And now before we close, from all of you, I would want to just explore one last question, which is what's your leadership mantra for women managers who aspire to lead the finance function or be in the C-suite role? So I'll quickly start with Lyril, please.
Stay confident in your abilities.
Right. Rashmi.
Create your own destiny.
Purnima.
Never leave an opportunity.
Right. Lika.
Keep learning, question the status quo, and be agile.
Meeta.
Yeah, 3 tenets, Vartika. Believe in yourself and advocate for yourself. Speak and seek without fear. And remember that you can do anything, but not everything.
So from an all-women panel, I think we've got a lot of insights into what being a woman means. And this brings us towards the end of this webinar. And on behalf of all the participants in ETCFO team, I would like to thank all the speakers for sparing their precious time and addressing the queries in this webinar. Thank you so much. And
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vartika.
And I would also thank you. And I would also like to thank the webinar attendees for their enthusiastic participation through their questions and feedback. And, at the end of it all, please stay connected and do subscribe and join ETCFO updates every day through our daily newsletter, especially, designed for finance professional. And always send us your thought and feedback and requests. So many, many thanks. And we hope to be back soon with another interesting topic. Thank you so much.